Hello everyone, this is Catherine and welcome to Tech Talk with Performatics. Performatics is a full stack engineering company specialized in agile product development. Our Tech Talks aims to bring insights from the world of product engineering, digital transformation and legacy modernization. Our speakers for today are Vipin and Arvind, mobile app developers with Team Performatics. Today, we'll be speaking about everything you need to know while choosing Flutter for app development. Welcome, Vipin and Arvind.
Hi,
Hi,
Catherine.
Karen.
It's really good to be part of Tech Talk.
Yeah, thank you. So, Vipin, can we just start? Can you explain briefly about Flutter?
Sure. Flutter is an open source mobile UI framework developed by Google for Android and iOS. Then they extended that support to other platforms like web, desktop. Even though they are in alpha and beta stages, we can say the Flutter is a true cross-platform application development for mobile, web, and desktop. And another interesting thing is that the Flutter compile code natively, so it doesn't lose its performance, or it can run like a native like app.
Yeah, all right. So, what are some of its native like features? Can you explain about it?
Yes, the Flutter use open source graphical engine on Skia for drawing its UI, its widgets. So the Skia, what it do that Skia is implemented in multiple platform. So we add a text or any labels or a button, it is compiled to a native buttons, and it will run like a what like it do native app do. So it is like native, and it's also support Java, Kotlin, and Object-C codes too. So it can run like a native app.
Yes. So there's a lot of focus on Flutter these days. Arvind, can you explain what kinds of apps can be built with Flutter?
Okay, hi, Karen. So, as Vivian said, Flutter is a cross-platform application. Which is meant to build beautiful UI applications such as entertainment applications, utility application, e-commerce application, lifestyle applications. We can build with these Flutter. So
Yeah.
some of the examples that I can point out is Google Ads is an example for utility application, and Alibaba, the famous Alibaba application is an example for e-commerce application that was implemented using Flutter. So there is another one, Reflectly, which is implemented using Flutter, which is having a beautiful UI. So
Yes.
we can create an application which doesn't need a heavy lift. We can always go for low profile applications like this.
All right. So Vipin, why is it better to use Flutter for MVP development?
Okay, the Flutter is very good for MVP if the app is needed to be developed in multi-platform. For example, consider a startup guy, a startup company which need an Android and iOS app, and if they are developing, they have to hire two teams, one Android team and one iOS team, and they have to do same features, same code on different languages in Kotlin in Android, Swift in iOS. So they are doing the same thing repeatedly.
Yeah.
But if take the Flutter or React Native, any cross-platform application, they are using single repository. From the single repository, we are writing code, so we can easily manage the code, and the time, the efforts are very less compared to the other native apps. That's why it is better for MVP. The Flutter is very good.
Yeah. So can you please explain about what are the benefits of choosing Flutter over say React Native?
Both the Flutter and React Native are mobile cross-platform app development, but they have their features, their abilities, and their limits. Like the React Native is a JavaScript, use JavaScript for development, which is known as React JS. It's a particular type of JavaScript. And for development, for learning, the web developer can easily learn JavaScript than a mobile developer. From someone from the Angular or the PHP can easily learn React Native than a Android developer or iOS developer. But if you take the Flutter, it's developing Dart. We are developing using Dart, and the Dart is more likely to be a Kotlin and Swift. So in the learning curve, Android developer and iOS developer can easily develop and Flutter application better than a web developer. Then after that, when comparing the UI, when we are writing code in React Native, actually when we compiling the code, it is converted into native buttons. Like if we are adding a button in React Native, button widget, it will convert it into button view in Android and UI button in iOS. That means the UI of the same button will appear different in two different platforms. But if we take the Flutter use SKR, which is implemented in multiple platforms, so it will appear as same. So in taking the UI, the Flutter is much better than the React Native and much faster than React Native.
That's really interesting, Vipin. So Arvind, Flutter is a fairly new platform. What are the positives and some of the downsides of using Flutter? From your experience, could you share?
Yeah, I would like to share my experience on the downsides and benefits of positives of Flutter. So some time back, I was assigned to develop an Android application, and I did it by in a time span of 6 months. And once the app was completed, the client want the same app to be implemented in iOS platform also. And I was not that fluent in iOS, and I had the confidence of completing the same app in a short span of 2 months of time. So what I chose was to go with Flutter. At that time, I never had an idea what Flutter is or what are the coding styles in Flutter. So with a gut feeling, I just kickstarted Flutter, and I was just wondering how could I complete that same app in a short span of 18 days.
Yeah.
I did it in 18 days, and the client was so happy to see the UI. UI was so attractive. The client want the same application to be implemented in for the Android application too. Yeah. So we did that, and that was one of the biggest benefits Flutter is having, or an upper hand over other rivals like React Native or any other cross-platform toolkits. And for a developer perspective, Flutter is so much faster, and the features of Flutter like hot reload is so much supportive for developers, and we don't have to wait for long Gradle build time to see the changes that we are doing in the code. Unlike the native, we don't have an XML or inside view of the UI in the IDE. Rather, we have the hot reload functionality where we can feel the UI in the mobile itself. This is one of the greatest positiveness of the Flutter. And when coming to the downside, one of the downside is if you are a newbie to programming, or if you are just beginner who is fluent in, who just kickstarted with MVC, MVP, or MVVM patterns, Flutter's architecture will be a kind of problem for you. Why? Because Google is recommending to go with block or Redux pattern for Flutter. So for a newbie, and it will not be that easy to learn and digest these kinds of architecture. So that will be a problem. And another problem is that Flutter is a new young platform, and this doesn't have a matured enough community on support for the Flutter. But one thing we have to appreciate is that Flutter is having a well-documented support from Google, where anybody, if you don't have to need to be a developer to understand the concepts of Flutter. You can just go to the site, download the documents, read it, and you just can start. That easy it is. So when I came back to the community side, I must tell about the plugins also, or we call it as libraries. There are not enough libraries available for Flutter because it's in 2018 only it came out of beta. So it's been only been 2 years. In this 2 years, only a limited amount of libraries came out, and many of the libraries are not supporting for iOS. Most of them are meant for Android only. So if you're developing an iOS application in mind, and if you're using some of the libraries, at the end you may realize that library is not supporting in iOS. So you have to find an alternative, or you have to make it yourself. You have to make a library yourself and implement. This will be this will give a little drag in your development phase. These are the downside and upsides that I could find from my experience.
Yes, that's interesting. So as you mentioned, there are different controls in Android and iOS, right? So what happens when a new version is out? Will there be any compatibility issues in the hybrid app built using Flutter?
No, there will not be any compatibility issues when new version comes out, because as Vipin said earlier, Flutter converts the Dart code to native ARM code, and it works on an independent matter. It doesn't need support from the native coding styles or any of their controls. It can work as an independent application. In general, there will be no compatibility issue for Flutter applications with the control changes in the native code base.
All right. So, Arvind, what about the storage systems that you use in Flutter?
We can use all kind of persistent storage as we use in native, like database, shared preference, reading and writing from file system. We can use everything, but only thing is that we have to include plugins for all this. There are no built-in system for this kind of storage system to be used. We can use SQLite and SQL shipper as the database, and we can use shared preference plugin for storing the data to shared preference. So these are it will not be a big concern.
That's interesting, Arvind. So, when should we not go for hybrid app development? What are the kind of businesses that should, avoid a hybrid app development? Can you please share your thoughts regarding this?
Sure. When we are developing a game application or application that do an intensive task like AI, ML, that kind of application, or utility apps which use the platform features and platform sensor data, that kind of app is more likely to be developed in native than the Flutter. But if you want to develop a beautiful applications and with minimum cost and minimum time, it is better to choose Flutter, because even it is developing for multiple platform, it is developing from a single code base. So it is easy to test, easy to fix bugs, and it's easy to maintain the whole code, and just need a few hands in the code. So easily we can develop an application in 1 or 2 months. If you are, and if taking the native side, like ML or machine learning languages or AI or intensive or always background running applications, like that applications, it's more like platform features. It's not like UI features. So in that kind of applications, it's better to choose native, because there, as Arvind said, there is lot of libraries, lot of things need to be discovered in Flutter. So it is better like intensive application, process intensive application, go for native.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Vipin. So, Arvind, can we just wrap it up by discussing about the future of Flutter. So what lies ahead for Flutter? Can you chip in your ideas?
Yeah, right now the Flutter mobile is completely out of beta, and now the Flutter for the desktop and web is in beta state. So in couple of maybe next year it will come out of beta and it will be a completely RTM version. And the next one they are focusing on maybe on embedded. So they want to make it compatible for an IoT version Flutter. And another one milestone is that Fuchsia. So Google is working on Fuchsia, and Fuchsia's app development will be completely based on Flutter. So maybe Fuchsia, when the Fuchsia comes out, it will be for a whole of IoT things rather than a mobile application development. Also, Fuchsia is a microkernel based operating system that can be run on any embedded device to any huge computing device. So that's the future of Flutter.
Yes. So the future definitely looks bright for Flutter. Thank you, Vipin, and thank you, Arvind, so much for joining us today. We had a really informative discussion about Flutter, and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. Bye.